the days when Russia was an unbeatable military force that had to be obeyed and listened to are fast disappearing. His standing would disappear. The use of a nuclear weapon is not a sign of strength, it's a sign of weakness. I'm Roger Boyes, I'm the Times diplomatic editor, and I write a weekly foreign policy column for the newspaper. The limitless friendship was agreed, was agreed just before the invasion, the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And so it naturally changed this whole pledge. It's extremely unusual, really, for two countries to make that kind of commitment. Not even, I don't know, France and Germany after the Second World War, in this massive reconciliation that happened after 1945, not even they went that far as to say limitless friendship. So the question was, how limitless is limitless? Does it mean does it include deep military alliance? Does it mean diplomatic support? Does it mean economic assistance in a crisis? So all these questions were unspoken, but then Russia proceeded to invade Ukraine, and suddenly the terms of that friendship were put to the test. And what we've been seeing over the last months of initially a shocking, surprising attack on Ukraine, followed by all sorts of setbacks for Russia, and then setbacks for Ukraine. What we've been seeing is a test of patience, really, on the part of China. How long can the terms of this friendship be left ill-defined and vague? And my thesis, anyway, is that this friendship is turning sour. It's turning sour for two reasons. One is that Russia is getting fed up with being essentially demoted to being junior partner of China, and it's turning sour because China itself signed up for something that it didn't expect. It signed up for a quick war, which it imagined and was promised by Putin that it would be in Ukraine, and an essentially incompetent, in many respects, Russian army, which is an embarrassment for its senior alliance partner, China. The most useful part of this Chinese-Russian alliance or axis, or however you want to describe it, has been the restraint that China has put on Russia's use of nuclear weapons in the conflict. First of all, because Xi Jinping imagined that the war against Ukraine would be a fast territorial war, perhaps involving the displacement of the Zelensky government, the fall of Kiev, a surrender, and perhaps some kind of dismantling of Ukraine, all of which China was more or less in favor of, or at least didn't have any fundamental objections to. But its main objections came apparent when the war lengthened. And the longer the war went on, the more Putin started to threaten the use of tactical nuclear weapons or battlefield nuclear weapons, or anyway, some kind of absolute escalatory measure that might in turn endanger China's own position as a nuclear power. The last thing China wanted was for the invasion of Ukraine to become part of a wider East-West conflict that then spread globally. And so it's noticeable that Russia, or Putin in particular, has tried to be restrained now about using tactical nuclear weapons on the battlefield, and one assumes that this restraint, which is not heard within the Russian elite, which is quite hawkish, has come from China's interventions, diplomatic interventions. China is worried about a nuclear war on its borders. It's worried that it will get sucked into that conflict. It's worried about destabilizing the China-Russian border. It's worried that America will become more aggressive towards China and any ambitions China has against Taiwan. There's no way that China can win from the Russian use of nuclear weapons. And China is making this increasingly clear. China doesn't want Russia to lose this war. It wanted the war to be quicker. It wanted it to have a more clean-cut end. And it didn't want the war to spread to China. And all of those calculations fed into the decision to help Putin in different ways. On the whole, this help has not been military, although there are signs that it might be turning more military. Russia, for example, has been running short of ammunition. China has plenty of ammunition, but what happened was that North Korea supplied and filled the gap with lots of shells and rockets that could be used on the battlefield. North Korea might have been acting on behalf of China. This is possible. But China's main assistance has been diplomatic. It's given Russia flanking it in the United Nations and in many international forums. But above all, it has given Putin an economic lifeline. Essentially, Western strategy has involved curbing and capping the amount of oil that Russia can export to the world. But China, which is growing not as fast as before, but still quite fast, is a natural customer for oil, Russian oil and gas, and in that way has kept Russia's balance books healthy enough for Russia itself to invest in a war economy and carry on with a third year of war. This is China's main contribution. But there are other less public interventions by China, including there's cooperation between the Chinese and Russian intelligence services. There's plenty of leverage that China can give Russia inside the global South. That's to say, the various supposedly non-aligned or non-committed countries that now regularly vote against or refuse to vote to condemn the Russian invasion. So it's a very intricate alliance that could, in my opinion, still go quite badly wrong. Well, the first real sign of dissension is that the big project that was supposed to seal this limitless friendship was a gas pipeline which fed gas from Siberian gas from Russia, from Siberia, into the expanding Chinese market. Now China has been saying, we don't want to pay you above the odds for this oil, or for this gas, and has in fact been demanding discounts from Russia. So this is a sign that that China considers itself to be the senior partner in this relationship with Russia. It's a sign that troubles Putin, and it troubles above all Putin's critics within the Kremlin. So all this is now beginning to play out, and it's beginning to play out on international fora. So the NATO summit is one moment when it will become clear what to do about continuing to supply weapons to the Ukrainians. That has been the main plank of support by the West to Ukraine, the supply of weapons, increasingly advanced weapons, not just ammunition, not just, at the beginning of the war it was helmets, it was gas masks, it was these kind of things. Now we're talking about really serious weapons, and some of which can reach Russian territory. They're now entering Ukraine, and they will be used over the next few months. And the NATO summit will decide, coming up in July, will decide whether this is a policy that should be expanded, stuck to, and what level of confrontation the West can risk when Western weapons supplied to Ukraine destroy Russian bases within Russia. In old-fashioned terms, this would be a declaration of war, or at least an act of war. This is then when China must make its choice. Does it want to be allied to Russia, that's in a virtual state of war with NATO? Or does it want to use the opportunity to be a peace broker, or to at least pretend to be a peace broker, giving Ukraine and Russia a path to separate from each other and detoxify the crisis? I think this issue is still being discussed in China, in the Chinese elite. Its natural preference is to stay with Russia for as long as possible, but there's plenty of arguments now for saying, get out of this. There was an opportunity recently to attend a peace conference organized in Switzerland. China chose not to attend. It chose not to attend out of loyalty to Putin. But this is a holding maneuver, and China could yet spring its own surprise on the world, not an invasion, but a peace initiative that would eventually entail a separation from, even a divorce from, Putin's Russia. It's never clear when Putin is bluffing and when he's not. It's his threat to escalate, that's to say, to punish the West for supplying these high-tech weapons to Ukraine by nuclearizing the conflict is plausible. That's to say, Russia is trained up to use tactical nuclear weapons, and its military doctrine essentially allows it to do so. It doesn't make a big difference either between tactical nuclear weapons and the big stuff, the strategic weapons. So it's a credible threat from Putin, but one that has to be seen in context. And the context is that Putin can't win by using nuclear weapons. It would lose, as I've said before, it would lose the support of China, which is a big deal. But more than that, it would find itself, it would essentially lose any meaningful control over Ukraine, because turning it into a nuclear battlefield is no road to success or prosperous reunion between Ukraine and Russia. All of these dreams would be extinguished. It's a terrible, terrible thing to start using tactical nuclear weapons at this stage, or indeed at any stage. And thirdly, and crucially, it would shed doubts on Putin's rational control over the situation. He's already faced a mutiny last year, or attempted mutiny last year, by Russian mercenaries and parts of the army. The days when Russia was an unbeatable military force that had to be obeyed and listened to are fast disappearing. His standing would disappear. The use of a nuclear weapon is not a sign of strength, it's a sign of weakness and weird indecision. And therefore, if Putin has any friends left in the Kremlin, they should be urging him not to do that.